right, we're looking at Java Man. We've looked at Neanderthal, Peking Man. Now we're looking at Java Man and some of the other discoveries of Homo erectus, modern day man, or whatever. The issue is they're all within the same age period according to the time it takes evolution for one species to change into another. So each time they seem to support a fully developed, superior ancient man who's devolved, not evolved. And we see some features in the Java Man that indicate he's modern human, just a different variation of qualities, changes. Lots of people look around you today, have larger heads, smaller heads, different kinds of jaw sets, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, attitudes. Okay, so looking at Java Man, a guy named Dubois claimed that the skull cap and the femur cap of this discovery came from a rock stratum known as the Trinil layer, named after a nearby village in central Java, Indonesia. He believed that these rocks were below what is known as the Pleistocene tertiary boundary of time that the evolutionists have imposed in the textbooks but can't find it in real life. Dubois was convinced that real humans evolved later in the middle Pleistocene. That's his conclusions, and he's looking for something to support that. Well, he misrepresented because his dating of Java Man was quite appropriate for a missing link. However, his interpretation was not exactly straightforward, as the man who later found other Java men, G.H.R. von Königswald, tells us. When Dubois, Königswald says, when Dubois issued his first description of the fossil Javanese fauna, he designated in Pleistocene. But no sooner had he discovered the Pithecanthropus that the fauna had suddenly become tertiary. So, I've changed my mind. On what basis? He did everything in his power to diminish the Pleistocene character of the fauna. But he was so adamant in the beginning. The criterion was no longer to be the fauna as a whole, but only his Pithecanthropus. Such a primitive form belonged to the tertiary. So he wants to put it back in time. Dubois had gone to the Dutch East Indies as an army doctor and was then given permission to search for fossils. To help him in his work, Dubois was assigned 2 corporals from the engineering corps who acted as supervisors and 50 forced laborers. Dubois was usually at his headquarters, but he made periodic visits on horseback to the digging sites. He also maintained written contact with the engineers about the progress of the work. When fossils were found, they were sent to Dubois for preparation and provisional identification. Dubois himself did not uncover any of the important fossils described to him, and he never saw any of them in situ, except Wadjak Man. He was entirely dependent upon his 2 engineers to determine the position of the fossils in the deposits. Engineers who knew even less about geology than he did. So Bert Ten Houston, Eugene Dubois, and the Ape Man from Java, an article that we're referring to. Broderick questions that Java Man came from the Trinil beds, suggesting that they came from higher up in the rock layers, which would have made them more recent in the age. Broderick, Early Man, London. Hutchinson, Scientific and Technical Publications. By today's standards, these fossils would have been disqualified, yet they become for many years the primary evidence for human evolution. When the skull cap and the thigh bone were discovered, Dubois spread the word officially and widely. He gave a rather detailed preliminary description of the fossils themselves, but he gave only the briefest account of the locality and the geological circumstances surrounding the discovery. His dating of Pithecanthropus was based on the mammalian fossil found with Pithecanthropus, but his proof consisted of only sketchy tidbits of information. It wasn't until late 1895, after he had returned from Java, that he displayed the first profile drawings and maps of the excavation site. Up until 1900, Dubois had been very active in promoting Java Man as the missing link, and it allowed full access to the fossils. After 1900, he withdrew completely from the public debate for 20 years, published very little about the fossils, and refused to allow anyone to see them. The reason usually given for this behavior is that Dubois wanted Java Man to be accepted as the missing link. Because of the initial controversy over his interpretation, he retaliated by refusing access to the fossils. Sounds like a great script for a movie. It was not until 1924, 33 years later, after the skull cap had been discovered, that Dubois published a definitive paper on it. 2 years later, he published a major paper on the thigh bone. So Lubino, in his Bones of Contention book, many anthropologists at the turn of the century also noted the remarkable similarity in shape between the Java Man skull cap and the Neanderthal skulls, which would indicate that Java Man and the Neanderthals, although differing in size, represented the same race of humans. People in this country today, in this world today, different sized people. Up until his return from Java, Dubois had ignored the Neanderthal remains because he felt that they were pathological. With the discovery of more Neanderthal material, Dubois was forced to reconsider them, and even he admitted the close resemblance between his own Java Man and the Neanderthals. One of Dubois' earliest papers on Java Man was presented in 1895 in Dublin shortly after his return from Java. It was entitled On Pithecanthropus erectus, a transitional form between man and the apes. In it, Dubois emphasized what was to be his theme for the rest of his life. Java Man was not a human being, nor was he an ape. He was the true intermediate or transitional form possessing features of both human and apes. Wonder how much money he earned for that. Sir Arthur Keith, the famed Cambridge University anatomist, was asked to comment on Dubois' paper. He replied that the chief question to be settled was whether or not the skull cap was human. In answering that question, to be settled was whether or not the skull cap was human. In answering that question, one had to determine the criterion of a human skull versus an ape skull. To his mind, there were two basic differences. First, the very cranial capacity of human skulls as compared to ape skulls, and second, the large muscular ridges and processes connected with the chewing apparatus, which ape skulls have compared to human skulls. On both Keith's points, Keith declared that the Java Man skull cap was distinctly human. Let's get back to the point here. So, on the cranial capacity of the anthropoid apes never exceeds 600 cc and averages about 500. On the other hand, the cranial capacity of Dubois' Java Man was estimated at 1000 cc, which is well within the range of humans living today. So William Turner, also responding to Dubois' paper, said that since the Java Man thigh bone had a pathological growth on it, possibly the skull cap was pathological also. He pointed that out in Edinburgh University Museum is the cast of a microcephalic woman with a frontal flattening very much like that of Java Man. The main question about the skull cap of Java Man was, is it human? However, there was no question about the nature of the thigh bone found a year after the skull cap and 50 feet from it. From the time of its discovery, virtually every authority except Dubois felt that it was indistinguishable from the modern human femur. The great question on the femur was, did it belong to the skull cap? It seemed far too modern in morphology to be associated with the rather archaic shape of the skull cap. It was here that Dubois' weakness in geology and the shortcomings of his methodology put him on the defensive. He did none of the actual digging, nor was mapping done at the time of excavation. All quadrant maps and diagrams were made after the fact. In Dubois' first report of his find to Dutch authorities in August 1892, he stated that the femur was located 10 meters from the place where the skull cap had been found a year earlier. Maybe the guy died and threw his leg away. In early September, he changed his figure to 12 meters. Wow. His official report later that same month in his official publication on Pithecanthropus mentions 15 meters. In a much later 1930 publication, he again mentions 12 meters. Wow. One of the most amazing facets of the Java Man saga is that in all the years of the 20th century, the skull cap and the femur together have been presented to the public as Java Man. Yet the association of the skull cap with the femur has always been questioned by the most respected anatomists from the time of their discovery until today. In 1938, Franz Wiedenreich described several femoral fragments of Peking Man. Both Peking Man and Java Man were quite similar. The Peking Man femora differed from the Java Man femur in the very places where the Java Man femur was similar to modern humans. Since the association of the Peking Man skulls and femur was undisputed, Wiedenreich concluded that the Java Man femur was not a true Homo erectus femur, but instead a modern one. The most recent assessment of the Java Man femur comes to the same conclusion. Michael Day and Mollison compare the Java Man femur, the Peking femur, and the femur known as Olduvai hominid, found by the Louis Leakey in Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania. In unquestioned association with other Homo erectus material, they state that OH28 and the Peking Man femur, although truly human, are much more similar to each other than either is to the Java femur. The conclusion is that OH28 and Peking Man represent Homo erectus anatomy, whereas the Java femur is more modern. Maybe they're all modern, you know. Here then, Michael Day and Mollison say, is the problem faced by evolutionist paleoanthropology. If the Java skull cap and femur actually belong together, then it is difficult to maintain a species difference between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. The distinction would be an artificial one, and it would compromise these fossils as evidence for human evolution. If, on the other hand, the skull cap belongs to Homo erectus and the femur belongs to Homo sapiens, it shows that these two forms likely lived together as contemporaries. It likewise removes these fossils as evidence for human evolution because fluorine analysis indicates that the fossils are both of the same age. Wow. There's a lot to sort out there. They're good at writing fiction. Recent suggestions are that the femur came from a much younger stratigraphic horizon than did the skull cap. But this naive attempt at time separation, 100 years after the fact, reveals the awkwardness evolutionists feel regarding these fossils. This suggestion comes not from the physical evidence at the scene, but from a transparent attempt to salvage Java Man as evidence for human evolution. It's got so famous, you know, PR worked out good until the evidence shows that it wasn't accurate. The Java Man skull cap and femur are evidence that the distinction between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens is an artificial one, that these two forms are both truly human and that they lived as contemporaries. The differences attributed to evolution are instead evidence of the wide genetic variation found in the human family. And we see that today in modern man. For the rest of his life, Dubois maintained that the skull cap and the femur belonged together and the Pithecanthropus was unique. When fossils similar to his Java Man were found, Dubois rejected the evidence out of hand. He labored hard to find tiny areas where his fossils differed from anything else that had been found so as to defend the uniqueness of his discovery. That's what happens when you plagiarize. My conclusions on Dubois and Java Man are as follows by Lubenow. Java Man is not our evolutionary ancestor, but is a true member of the human family, a post-flood descendant of Adam and a smaller version of Neandertal. Dubois seriously misinterpreted the Java Man fossils, and there was abundant evidence available to him at the time that he had misinterpreted them. Outright liar. The evolutionist dating of Java Man at 500,000 years is highly suspect. More modern-looking humans, possibly including Wadjak Man, were living as contemporaries of Java Man, and 5. Java Man was eventually accepted as our evolutionary ancestor in spite of the evidence because he could be interpreted to promote evolution. So I figured out a story, and then now, okay, he's good evolution. But until they changed the story, he was in suspect, and he went in hiding.